Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Gerald from Netlify, and welcome to the first edition of Ask Netlify. Joining me is Phil Hawksworth.
Hey, how's it going? Nice
Things
to
are
see you,
great.
Gerald.
Yeah, this is excellent.
You're
I'm
looking, uh,
from.
you're looking kind of happy and smiley and wearing your Snap Gatsby shirt. It's
I'm
very smart.
always happy. I'm always excited. I love our community in Jamstack. I love Gatsby, so I'm wearing a Gatsby shirt. But I plan on wearing other shirts for all of the other awesome services I love in future episodes.
Great. I should have got on that train as well. I'm just wearing like a plain shirt. I'm not going to get lots of free stuff. You're going to be the one. Which
Well,
reminds me, actually, have you got Netlify socks yet?
no.
How do we get those?
I think
That should
only
be
the first
question number
couple
one
weeks
on this
ago.
thing.
Exactly. That makes me very jealous. But mind you,
Yeah.
using these clothes for these episodes gives me a
Yeah.
justification for shoving more of them into the house.
Nice. Yeah.
Yes.
Good thinking. I like your
Yeah.
thinking.
So I'm from the support team here at Netlify. Probably a lot of you have spoken to me if you've written in. And
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, Gerald, because kind of catching up with you at some conferences around the way
yeah.
and talking to attendees at the conferences, and the people have come along and said, "Oh, who's here from Netlify?" And when I mention your name, I've had more than one person say, "Gerald's here. He helps me out all the time." And that's how it is for me as well. I often talk to people on Twitter or at events,
Mhm.
and often people are asking me questions. And I don't know, a big percentage of the questions that I answer by telling people the things that you and other members of the support team have told me. So it's nice that we can scoop more of that out of your head and kind of share it on the web. That was a grim kind of
Yeah.
metaphor. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's all right. People understand. But no, this is super exciting. And I love connecting with you because you get to talk to our developers from the other side all day long, and you have a lot of thoughts and stuff too. So this is definitely exciting. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to answer some questions that people have and just get some information and some context out there for people to get some info out of.
Exactly. Yeah, sounds good. So where have these questions come from then? How did we get them?
So we ask on Twitter, and we've asked in a couple of other communities, and we hopefully will get more people sharing ask.netlify.com, which is where we want everyone to come and join there's a repo there. You can open issue, ask any question. We do still have a support channel, and we prefer that regular support questions still go there. But here we'll deep dive into some topics. We can talk about things around Jamstack, around Netlify, some of our plans, some thoughts and stuff, and how we do things, and generally just be able to give people a place where they can ask us whatever they want.
Sounds good. Nice. Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, should we just jump straight into it? Is that the best thing?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
All right, let's start diving through these questions then.
All right. So the first question is a pretty common one, actually, and it's how do I control cache duration on the CDN?
Nice. Yeah, I get this one a lot when I'm either at events or you've seen it a lot on Twitter as well. Quite a lot of people, are longing for that control. And the honest answer is that you can control this because you can have custom headers, right, that you can set. But the better answer is that you don't need to. That's one of the things that Netlify is designed to do on your behalf. Because since we manage our own CDN and we become like the origin server, right? Our build is like the origin, and then there's really no origin at request time. Everything goes out to the CDN. So we do some smart things to manage that all for you. So strictly speaking, no one should ever need to manage the cache headers. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, especially if we're your origin. If you're proxying, then it might be a different story. But if we're just building your site and putting it out on our CDN, we automatically add cache control headers, and we manage the invalidating of that cache automatically. So users don't have to. If their cache is still good, we'll send them a 304. We'll say keep using it. We will. You don't have to touch it, and that's what we want. That's what we want.
Nice. And so you mentioned like if you're proxying. So if people are either put another layer in front of Netlify, or if they're proxying requests behind.
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe
if you
using
have
our
like an
redirects
API or something. Yes.
Right.
And we're proxying your content, then you might want to set different cache control headers. If you have images or something where you don't want any requests back to you for the next year because that will never change. Or if you have assets that you fingerprint the name, So
Yeah.
you know that you'll never change that. You'll always provide a new one. Then you don't necessarily need them to ever be able to come back with another request back to your proxied service. So we handle that. Also, if you enable asset optimization and for image processing, and we move those images to CloudFront for you automatically, then so those are cached indefinitely, and that will never come back and need to hit the origin again for those requests.
Nice. I couldn't figure out if a doorbell went there or if there's a tone that happens whenever you say CloudFront. It's the alarm that goes off whenever.
Whenever a door opens, that goes off. So I know, because I'm over here working in my home office, and this way I know it's
all right.
happening.
So it's not a content warning. Okay, we don't need to panic. Yeah. Cool. So just to kind of wrap that up then. So the kind of the answer to this is, you don't need to, for like the vast majority of cases. If you're using Netlify, you're not going to need to manage the cache yourself. We just have very smart defaults, and we'll do that for you. If you are doing something a bit more exotic, like proxying things to elsewhere, and you want control over that, you do that via our custom headers. Is that right?
You can pass cache control headers. If we proxy your content or your server, then any cache control headers or any other headers that you set in the proxied content will be forwarded along to the user, and our CDN will respect any cache control headers you pass. So if you put that you never want us to cache something, then we just won't cache it. Likewise, a interesting story from this week, which is that one of our users accidentally sent cache control headers with expiration 1 year out, immutable, for 404 response, which meant that we won't go back and look for that content next year. And so everyone was, it was one of those things that was difficult to figure out where it was coming from, what the issue was, and it's because we respect your cache control headers. So if you decide that you want to control it, then you should be careful and double check that you're setting the right headers.
Right. Yeah. Caching is not easy. And that's one of the reasons we try and make it as easy as possible by doing this on your behalf. Right.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Should we call that question answered and move right along?
Yeah, definitely. And if anyone has follow-ups or doesn't quite understand it, then we actually have a very interesting article that we'll link to in the notes for this video, where we explain in more detail on our blog how we handle caching.
Nice. And that's probably a good note just for any of these, any resources that we mention, any articles we talk about, we'll try and link those up in some kind of show notes or something that gets posted along with this video. Okay. All right. So let's move on to our next question. And this one has actually come in to our repo that we created for this. So this is from Tony Alves. So he asks, what does the free plan on Netlify really give me? And this is kind of an interesting one, because I think whenever I've described Netlify to people, that's one of the first questions I get. They say, "Okay, but what do I get for free?" Because that sounds like you're talking about a lot. So can you is that easy to summarize, Gerald? Can you say, what do you get?
Well, the way I like to think about it is, if you have a personal site or a portfolio, you probably don't have to pay for anything. Anything smaller, you don't have to pay for. And again, if you also have an open source project, then contact us, because we offer free open source teams that give you more bandwidth and all that stuff over the regular free tier. But if it's just a personal project or even just a website that doesn't get too much traffic, then our free tier is actually pretty generous. You get access to our build environment and all of those features that we want everyone to have. And then we have allowances for our metered products like forms and identity and all that. So there is a free version for all of those features. And then when you go down to the core, we offer 100 gigabytes of bandwidth. That's a soft limit. And we offer 100 gigabytes of storage. Again, that's a soft limit. And we don't cut you off for that. If you exceed it, we'll just reach out to you and tell you, hey, your usage is exceeding our free level, so these are your options.
Cool, nice, yeah. And I think like you say, for a lot of users, that should be ample. And if you are running an open source project, we're happy to support that. And a lot of the big open source projects already have sites on Netlify. Like React is on there, like Vue is on there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of them. Kubernetes, their doc site. So we do support a lot of open source, and I think I heard that we have more than 50% of the big open source projects are hosting on Netlify. So we definitely love open source. We have a whole bunch of open source projects, and want to continue to support that community because we also consume a lot of these open source projects ourselves.
Cool, nice. Yeah. And just going back to kind of what you get for free, how about things like, so I've got a bunch of sites, for example. Yeah. So are there limits to the number of sites you can have on the free tier, or the number of deploys you can do? Because I know that some places are like metered on deploys and those kind of things.
We can have, I think it's 3 deploys a minute. That's per 3 deploys a minute per branch, I believe.
Is that through the API, or is that if you're using continuous deployment?
That's only for continuous deployment.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But what you'll find is that you probably won't ever go past that limit, because generally at a deploy most of them will take over a minute.
Right.
But the way we like to set up the limits for deploys is that you shouldn't have to worry about it. And where you end up having the real issues is if you have a fairly large site, or you have long deploys, which means that you can't have as many going on concurrently because your deploys are longer. And if you need a custom build environment with all this stuff, then you're going to have to pay for that. And we do offer an enterprise tier that allows you to have custom build settings that suit your needs. But for the free tier, we find that I believe that you created a site that deployed every minute. Wasn't it?
I did, and yeah. I did it very nervously, and it's a ridiculous way to do something, but it was just to prove the point that the friction is so low for deploying. So yeah, I just had a webhook that would like kick off a build every minute, and that just figured out what the time was and then deployed the time. So it's like a generated clock, which is crazy, but it's fine.
That on a free plan.
Yeah.
So, I think that's something some people worry, and they wonder if using some of these other build services where that's a hard limit. And so we like to keep it so that we give you a very generous free tier to use almost all of our services for free. About the only thing that's behind a paywall are stuff like if you want to use a JWT-based authentication, and if you need a team plan, then that's behind a paywall. But for just regular usage, to use forms, to use identity, Netlify CMS again is free. You can use identity for that without hitting those limits. Generous bandwidth and storage, and you could log into your account and you could see how much bandwidth you're using for your account.
Right. Oh yeah, that's a reasonably new development. I mean, it's one of those things that I didn't see once upon a time, and then it was there. It's one of those nice, like every now and again there's like another little nugget that arrives in the app, and it's kind of nice to see stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I work here, and there's sometimes I'm like, oh, what is this? I didn't even know we could do this.
I know there was probably a meeting. If I'd paid attention, I would be surprised.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So it sounds like pretty much anything that anyone's going to want to do, unless they're really hitting high bandwidth and and having a slightly more exotic setup with things like Teams and some authentication, people should be good to go, right?
Yes. So unless you need anything beyond those limits, because there's also there's a hard limit of 50 minutes for your build time, and that's across all of our regular self-serve tiers. So if you need more than that, then you'd have to move to enterprise to get custom build settings. But for the vast majority of users, our free plan is pretty generous. And then we offer team plans that offer additional settings. We have passwords and stuff, but that's only on like the pro team. And this is stuff that we think that are more business focused, or if you're a company or your business, then these are services that you would need and then you would pay. But for, if you're just making a hobby project, an open source project, if you're making a personal site, then a lot of that stuff you can do on our free tier without having to really worry about your usage.
Nice. And I like that because it means that if you're evaluating Netlify and you want to kind of really see if it's going to work for you, you can get access to all these things and just start experimenting with it. And I think that's probably one of the reasons we offer it in this way, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're working on our messaging, because I do the fact that we do get people asking this makes me think that, oh, maybe it's not 100% clear. And a lot of people do ask, like, is this really free? And it's like, yeah, you can definitely link your repo and we'll just build it. And, in 30 seconds, you'll have a site up without having to pay a dime. So
nice. Excellent. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, maybe in the interest of time, we should we keep rolling?
Yeah, sure. Let's go to the next question.
Okay.
So this one is by Nathan Helfie. That's his GitHub username. Please forgive me if I butcher any names. And the question is, I'm going to read it, and I'll
Yeah.
also put it here so on the screen after. I have
Okay.
a CLI-based project which uses some env files to set some values to be used in the build process. Since it's a front-end project, the key isn't particularly sensitive, and I've just committed the files, but it makes it more difficult for users who want to change the setting for local testing with their own keys. I haven't been able to find any good recommendations or examples of how to handle setting variables in a way that's also friendly to local development. What is a recommended way to set your env?
Okay, so let me take a swing at this one, because if I'm understanding this question correctly, this is where environment variables are your friend, and using something like .env is going to be your friend. So let me tell you what, I'm going to share my screen for just a second, and let's see if we can get this to work. This is an exciting moment as we try and share screens. Are you seeing my screen now rather than my face? Okay, cool. So I think Nathan, that this is probably what you're after. So .env is an npm package that you can use in your project, and effectively what it does is it allows you to override the environment variables that you'd be getting from your build system with those that are specified in a local file. And the way that works, you install this npm package, and then you require it into your build with a line like this, where you require .env and you run this configure method. And at that point, what it will do is it will replace any of the process.env environment variables, such as this one, with whatever it finds in a local .env file. So let me show you what that looks like on my own site. So this is the repo for my own site, and in my package.json, I'm including that as a dependency, so I've got access to .env. And then in the code itself, where I use it, let me see if I can dig into where I actually make use of this. Data, okay. So I, for instance, am pulling in tweets into my build from Twitter. And here you are. So in the code, I'm requiring it in the way you just saw in that example. And then when I'm populating this new Twitter method, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing it from an environment variable, but since I've required this .env package, this value here is going to come from whatever I have in a .env file. So I'm going to also show you that .env file. Now that's something that you don't submit to version control. So here you are, have an env sample. So this is a nice pattern, so that if you put the sample in there, this is kind of descriptive. And then each developer, as they run this, they'll replace these strings with their own values for that, and that'll be used locally. Now, up on Netlify, meanwhile, where the actual build is running, I'm going to go to my deploy settings, and here we are down here. So I'm comfortable sharing these environment variables, even though they're secrets, because they're truncated, the sensitive ones. So effectively, when you push your code to Netlify, we'll use these environment variables. But locally, you'll be using the ones that you've got in that .env file, which is local, which you're not committing. So each developer can have access to their own values for these variables. And then you've also got something in production. So I'm going to stop sharing. So hopefully that answered the question. Is that your understanding as well, Gerald?
It's a good way to transport your variables and to allow people to override the variables locally when they're testing.
Cool. Nice. Okay. Well, again, we'll send links to those along with the video as well. So, God, time is getting on. I reckon. Yeah. Do you reckon we can do another one? How are we doing?
Yeah. I think we could do another one. Yeah, we still.
Okay. We're still good. Okay, great. In that case, so this is another question that I've been asked a lot, either on Twitter or in the real world, and that is, when can we get IPv6? When's that coming to Netlify? When are we going to have support for that? Because I know a lot of people have been depending on that. So what's the word?
So this is pretty exciting because we actually just rolled this out about 2 weeks ago, last week actually, and right. It's been a long time coming. We have a multi-cloud architecture here, so we had to get that support across multiple clouds, across multiple systems, and working with everything. And we finally got that done. And so we do support IPv6. Most internet traffic is still running over IPv4, so I don't know what percentage of people will be able to take advantage of it, but it is there. I should mention that right now we don't have a single IPv6 IP if you're hosting your own DNS. But if you're using Netlify to manage your DNS, then we will set the IPv6 records for you. And if you also set a CNAME record for your subdomain .netlify.com, then you'll also get the benefits. We'll return an IPv6 lookup there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it feels like it's been such a long time coming, this this feature, this capability.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that when you're a multi-cloud CDN and you're doing all of the management like down the layers of the stack, you know, it's nice to think, oh, it's a checkbox, turn it on. But I know that the infrastructure team and the platform team have been like sweating it to get that done. So it's exciting to see that out there now. Yeah. And there is a blog post about that also talks about some of the details of that. So that's another thing that we should share in the notes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's definitely an interesting blog post to read. And if anyone has questions about it, again, you could contact us at support@netlify.com.
Nice. Mm-hmm. What do you think? One more, or are we?
We definitely have time. I have not gotten any warnings yet, so.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what's next?
Okay. So this next one is from Peter, and it was asked in the Ask Netlify repo. And Peter says, I've deployed a couple of times as trials and all went well, but now there's a deploy that never ends. The deploy log shows that spinning thing, and it's done so for days. I can't see a way to interrupt or stop it. Any advice?
All right. Okay. So, I mean, this sounds actually like a good contender for a question that might be best sent to support, because it sounds like there's something not quite right there. Mm-hmm. So I know that so our builds, they'll time out after 15 minutes. So like you were mentioning earlier on, unless you're on an enterprise plan, and we've kind of talked about that and got something longer. So you should never get something that just spins and spins and spins and never ends. So it should time out after 15 minutes. So it sounds like there's an issue there that's probably worth talking to the support team about. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's probably worth mentioning, because I have heard people ask about being able to like terminate deploys and those kind of things. There isn't currently a facility to do that, and I know that's been talked about. I know there's been some discussions about being able to terminate builds, but I don't know where it lives on our roadmap at the moment. But I certainly would be kind of keen to see it. But one of the things that is kind of useful here, I'm going to share my screen again just for a moment. There we go. So this was a blog post that went out like a week ago by Brett, one of the members of the team, who was addressing an issue that he'd been asked about, where a deploy hadn't been hanging, but it seemed to be taking a really long time to terminate. So what Brett worked on was making it much more obvious. So I don't know if you can see here in the screenshot of the deploy logs, if we detect a process that looks like it's either hanging or isn't going to return, we actually now flag that out. So at least it makes it easier for you to spot processes in your own build scripts that either are going to just like live a really long time or isn't going to terminate or return. So hopefully that helps in troubleshooting your own builds if you've got builds that seem to be taking a long time. But sadly, at the moment, there isn't a way to manually terminate those. Maybe that'll come in future, but we'll just have to see. Yeah.
Well, right now, what happens is you have 15 minutes from when we run your build command. Everything from before that, running your build command, that's not included in this time. And your build command has to end within 15 minutes or we'll terminate it. In this case, it sounds like there is an issue there for Peter, and he definitely needs to contact support so we can talk to him about it. One other thing to consider is that if you're doing a manual deploy, we don't have logs for that. So if there's an error of any kind, it might just sit there. And
what do you mean by a manual deploy, Gerald?
Drag and drop deploy.
Okay, got you.
Yes. Sorry. We consider manual deploys drag and drop deploys, or if you use the CLI to deploy, those are considered manual as opposed to continuous integration with the Git repo.
Right, where the build runs in our environment.
Correct. We don't actually, since if we're not running your build, then we don't actually have any logs for that. Nor do we know the state of the process. The good thing about that is you can immediately retry. If you feel like this is going longer than it should, then you can immediately just retry another deploy. It won't cause any issues. The new deploy, assuming it works, will just be published, no issues. One other thing is if a deploy starts a continuous integration from Git, and it runs and for whatever reason it got stuck for 1 hour, and you trigger a new deploy, it'll actually error out that old one. So you can do that. It'll just error it out. Those are
nice.
That almost never happens, to be honest. We hardly ever see stuck builds. So that's not something you usually have to worry about. But if you do see a stuck build, that was a Git-based deploy, then definitely contact support. That new blog post with that feature tells you about a lingering process. I think that's fairly huge. We get people who don't realize if they're using a plugin or if they have some weird configuration, and their Webpack is actually spawning. Sorry about that.
That's Nathan actually contacting support right now, isn't it?
It actually is a support call. If we see issues sometimes where people are running a watch command in their environment, or they'll start up like a Webpack dev server, because they use the wrong command or something like that, and they don't quite realize what's happening. And of course, those don't end by themselves. So that's why you'll see it timing out, and you might not know what's happening. So definitely that feature will tell you that this deploy timed out, and you had these processes running at the time that we killed it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So this last one, I don't know. This could be a pretty open-ended one. We'll have to see how we go. So this came into the Ask Netlify repo as an issue, and Frank has asked, what's in the Netlify pipes? What's coming up? Because I think he's keen to see maybe what the roadmap is. I've seen questions about that, but I think he also kind of goes on to talk about are there so he mentioned a FaunaDB integration that he saw demoed at the Jamstack conference, which we had recently in San Francisco. And so maybe his first part of the question is, are there any other integrations planned at Netlify? And then I guess the bigger question is, what else is coming? So over to you, Gerald.
Okay, so we do have plans to open this up more so that more people can integrate. And a lot of this is we want people to come to us and talk to us about it, and we will definitely work with you to integrate. We don't really have a big roadmap. A lot of this is still in development and figuring out the next steps, but we definitely will have more to talk about in terms of integrations with the CLI.
I saw David Wells. So one of our colleagues, David Wells, had been working on that. So he'd been working on the CLI tool, and also working on like add-ons model. So that you could use the CLI to say provision the site, but then also provision a service with a partner. And I think that this FaunaDB is a good example of that. So you could run a command, it would provision something in Fauna, stitch that together with Netlify, and kind of create an environment with all of those things. And I think as you're saying, there's not that add-on marketplace doesn't exist yet, but we're kind of starting to kind of move into that area and hopefully make it easier for people to integrate through the CLI for that.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I will point out in the second half of Phil's question here was the demo at Jamstack. That was actually at the Jamstack New York meetup from a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and the Take Shape, they have a very nice headless EMS in the Jamstack space. And what they demoed was that you can create a site through Take Shape and deploy it to Netlify immediately. And what they're actually using is our API, and they're just doing an OAuth connection, right? The authentication there with your Netlify account, and then using the Netlify API. I believe actually they're using serverless functions for this to deploy the new site to Netlify directly using the API. So that actually doesn't require anything special from us. That's available for anyone to make that type of integration right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's kind of exciting when I see the number of companies that are starting to work in this space, the kind of services that we could kind of glue together through some of these tools. It's going to be exciting to watch how that matures. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, in terms of the roadmap, I'm actually very, very interested to know what we can say. So maybe
I know there's good stuff. There's good stuff coming.
I know.
maybe over the course of some more of these recordings, we can hint at some more things as they're kind of approaching being able to ship. I know we have to be a tiny bit careful, but there are some interesting things along the way. One of the parts of this question also asks, is there any plan for a GraphQL layer for the Netlify API? And I don't believe there's plans for that at the moment. Am I right?
No, we don't currently have any plans for that. It's actually a lot of work to create a GraphQL backend, especially because our API is quite large right now. And while there are some benefits, it's kind of a solution looking for a problem for us right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's a nice to have. It's something I personally would like to see because I like GraphQL. But there are no immediate plans to offer it to do it. One thing I can mention is if you'd like to use GraphQL, then anyone can create their own GraphQL server that's a wrapper around our existing REST API, and then just use that. Yeah,
right.
That's a pretty common way. It's how a lot of companies migrate existing REST APIs to GraphQL.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. But yeah, I think like you say, this is one of those things that it's a solution looking for a problem at the moment. I know that people are excited about GraphQL and kind of enjoy using it. And it feels at the moment like people can do what they need to with the Netlify API right now. So it's probably not very high up our list when there's some other cool things we want to ship first.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I guess have a feeling that this is one of those questions that we'll kind of keep coming back to as we've got more things that we can talk about and features and kind of parts of the product that are starting to ship. So when we get a bit closer to those, we can talk more about those, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think that was our last question.
I think it was. I think there's some other bits and pieces that we're not going to get time to talk about today. I know that there's some questions that we want to dive into, but maybe we'll do those on the next go around.
Yeah. So I just want to say Ask Netlify is the name we're using right now. But if anyone has any better suggestions, then feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, those could come in as questions or suggestions through the same process, right? So there's ask.netlify.com, which is the site where perhaps this is where this video is going to get posted. Who knows? Maybe it'll just go up onto YouTube. But it's certainly the way to get questions to us. It's the kind of gateway through to the repo where all of the issues get logged. So ask.netlify.com is your friend. There's also, of course, you can ask questions on Twitter. So the Netlify handle is a good way to ask questions, and usually someone will pick it up. Sometimes it's people outside of Netlify that answer those questions. We're pretty fortunate to have a very active and kind of knowledgeable community of people using Netlify, so that's kind of nice.
Oh, and on that note, we are actually working on our new Netlify community, and that's something that we hope to have available in the first quarter of 2019. And so people will be able to contact us through there and help each other and talk to us and everything right through our new community.
Cool. And maybe on another one of these videos, maybe we'll try and rope Perry into coming and talking to us, because Perry, our new our community manager, I bet would have some thoughts. So maybe we can rope Perry in.
Yeah, I think they're very interested in doing that.
Sweet. So I guess the last thing to mention is that, yes, you can ask questions this way, but of course the support channel is your primary point of contact for anything that actually is a support question. And so the best route for that is to go to netlify.com/support. That's the preferred route, right, Gerald?
Yes, and you could also just email us at support@netlify.com. For us, they come into the same place. I strongly urge everyone to use this method of contacting us. You'll get a response faster, and we also get a lot more context when you contact us that way. A lot of questions come in through Twitter that we don't really have enough context to investigate it yet. So yeah, definitely reach out to us, support at netlify.com or netlify.com/support.
Sweet. Cool. Okay, so I think that kind of does it. I guess we should thank everyone who's submitted questions. We really appreciate your questions. We're looking forward to hearing what you're going to ask next. So with that, it's thanks from me in merry old England.
And thank you from me in New Jersey. So this was exciting, Phil, and everyone, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
See you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.